April 18, 1942. In Tokyo's heart, cherry blossoms drift like confetti through morning air, thick with triumphant celebration. Loudspeakers crackle across the imperial capital, announcing fresh conquests across the Pacific. Japanese families gather around radios, children playing war games in cobblestone streets. Always the victorious rising sun forces defeating hapless Americans. The homeland stands sacred and untouchable, protected by divine winds and the endless Pacific Ocean. For 600 years, no foreign bomb has fallen on Japanese soil. The people feel invincible, their emperor godlike, their military machine unstoppable. At exactly 12:15 that afternoon, the world changes forever. 4 months earlier, America bleeds from Pearl Harbor's wounds. The Pacific Fleet lies, shattered in Hawaiian waters, oil still seeping from the Arizona's tomb. Wake Island falls, Guam surrenders. The Philippines crumble under relentless Japanese assault. In Washington, D.C., maps mark defeat after defeat in red ink. German U-boats prowl the American coast like hunting sharks. Britain gasps under Nazi bombardment. Moscow's suburbs echo with Wehrmacht boots. The Axis powers appear unstoppable, their momentum seemingly divine. In Pentagon corridors, desperate men search for any way to strike back. Captain Francis Lowe walks past Norfolk Naval Air Station on a cold January morning, watching Army bombers practice carrier takeoffs on a runway painted with deck markings. Most officers would see routine training. Lowe sees the impossible made possible. He rushes to Admiral Ernest King with an idea so audacious it borders on madness. Launch fully loaded Army bombers from a Navy aircraft carrier. Fly them 800 miles to bomb Japan, then continue another 1,200 miles to crash land in China, hoping Chinese guerrillas might rescue survivors. Everything about this plan defies physics, logic, and military doctrine. They need a legend to make it work. James Harold Doolittle stands 5 feet 4 inches tall, but contains enough aviation genius for 10 men. MIT doctorate in aeronautics. Winner of the Schneider Trophy air race. Pioneer of instrument flying. A man who has spent his life transforming impossible dreams into routine achievements. When offered command of this suicide mission, Doolittle doesn't hesitate. He tells his wife it will likely be a one-way trip, but if they can shatter Japanese confidence in their homeland's invincibility, any price seems worthwhile. At Eglin Field in Florida's Panhandle, Doolittle assembles 80 volunteers from the Army Air Force's most skilled pilots, navigators, bombardiers, gunners, and engineers. He reveals nothing, except that the mission is voluntary, extremely dangerous, and if successful, will strike the first American blow against Japan since Pearl Harbor. Not one man steps backward. These are 20-somethings who grew up during the Great Depression, hardened by poverty, shaped by determination. They understand that freedom demands sacrifice. The training pushes human and mechanical limits. B-25 Mitchell bombers normally require 1,200 feet for takeoff. These crews must launch in 450 feet, the length of 4 city blocks. Picture a 30,000-pound aircraft loaded with fuel and bombs, accelerating from 0 to takeoff speed in less distance than a shopping mall parking lot. The margin for error measures in inches and split seconds. Too slow means plunging into ocean depths with all 5 crew members. Too fast destroys engines through catastrophic overstress. They practice until their hands bleed, their eyes burn from exhaustion. Their dreams fill with the roar of engines and the terror of failure. Every unnecessary item gets stripped from the aircraft. Radios, armor plating, bottom gun turrets, even personal belongings disappear to maximize fuel capacity. They paint broomsticks black and mount them as fake machine guns to fool enemy fighters from a distance. Navigation calculations become exercises in life and death mathematics. Fuel consumption is measured to the ounce, knowing they will fly the final hours on fumes and prayers. Most critically, Doolittle trains them for zero-altitude flying. Not 50 feet. Not 25 feet. 0. They will streak across Japanese cities so low that civilians on rooftops can see their faces clearly. April 2nd brings the point of no return. 16 B-25s are hoisted aboard USS Hornet in San Francisco Bay, their wings folding upward to fit the carrier's elevators. Even the ship's crew remains ignorant of their true destination until they pass beyond the Golden Gate Bridge. Only then does Captain Mark Mitcher announce over the intercom, "This ship will carry Army bombers to within striking distance of Japan. The Army will bomb Japan, and we will bring them as close as possible." 20,000 sailors' cheers echo across San Francisco Bay, a sound that carries all of America's fury and hope. 16 days of racing across the Pacific through mountainous seas. The bombers lashed to the deck like sleeping giants, salt spray coating their aluminum skin. Pilots study target photographs until they memorize Tokyo's street patterns. They practice Japanese phrases phonetically. Watakushi wa America, anata nigai wo, shimasen chugokugan, wa doko desu ka. I am American. I will not harm you. Where is the Chinese army? They write final letters home, knowing most will never be delivered by human hands. April 18th, 6 a.m., 650 miles east of Japan, a Japanese patrol boat spots the task force through morning mist. Radio operators intercept enemy transmissions reporting American ships. The element of surprise evaporates like morning dew. Admiral William Bull Halsey faces an agonizing choice: abort the mission or launch immediately, 400 miles farther from China than planned. Doolittle makes the decision in seconds that feel like hours. We launch now. We're going. History pivots on those 4 words. At 8:20 a.m., Doolittle's bomber roars down Hornet's 450-foot deck, the carrier pitching in heavy seas. Deck crew wave checkered flags, timing the launch to catch the ship's rising bow. Engines scream at maximum power, propellers clawing at salt-thick air. The bomber lifts off with mere feet to spare, immediately dropping toward the wavetops before clawing back to altitude. Doolittle waggles his wings once, then disappears into gray Pacific haze. 15 more B-25s follow, each take off a death-defying ballet of torque, wind, and split-second timing. All 16 bombers achieve the impossible, becoming airborne with full fuel and bomb loads. They fly west in loose formation, skimming wave crests to avoid radar detection. For 3.5 hours they see nothing but endless ocean, each pilot alone with his thoughts and fears. Navigation depends entirely on dead reckoning, compass headings, and prayers. No radio contact, no weather reports, no backup plans. Just 5 young men in each aluminum cocoon, betting their lives on mathematics and courage. As the Japanese coast appears through morning haze, they climb to bombing altitude and separate toward individual targets they have studied but never seen. In Tokyo, at lunch hour, office workers stroll through Ueno Park, admiring cherry blossoms in full bloom. Housewives hang laundry on apartment balconies. Children play in schoolyards, their laughter mixing with temple bells and street vendor calls. Above them, the sky spreads clear and blue, unmarked by danger. Air raid sirens exist, but have never sounded in anger. The concept of enemy aircraft over Tokyo seems as impossible as snow in summer. At 12:15 p.m. precisely, Doolittle's B-25 roars over downtown Tokyo at 1,200 feet. So low that people in the streets can clearly see the white star on blue circle painted on its wings. American wings? Over the sacred capital. The impossible materializes before their eyes, like a nightmare becoming real. Citizens point skyward in confusion, then terror. This cannot be happening. Americans cannot be here. The divine emperor's protection cannot fail. The first bombs fall on Kanagawa Navy Yard, explosions sending pillars of black smoke skyward. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries plant erupts in flames that will burn for hours. Japan Steel Corporation works disappears in clouds of smoke and debris. In 17 minutes, that redefine reality. American bombs explode across Tokyo. Yokohama, Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe. Factories become furnaces. Military installations vanish in thunder and flame. Air raid sirens finally wail across the homeland, their cry piercing Japanese souls like ice daggers. Michiko Yamamoto hangs her husband's shirt on their apartment balcony when Doolittle's bomber passes directly overhead. I looked up and saw the American star, clearly, she recalls years later. The pilot appeared so young. I stood frozen, clothespin in my hand, watching this American boy drop bombs on my city. I realized everything we had been told about divine protection, about being safe from foreign attack, was lies. We were as vulnerable as anyone else. Across Japan, millions experienced the same terrifying epiphany. If Americans can bomb Tokyo, they can bomb anywhere. The myth of invincibility shatters like temple glass. Japanese radio broadcasts, usually confident and triumphant, become confused and contradictory. First, they deny any attack occurred. Then they admit bombing but claim all American planes were shot down. Hours later, they acknowledge most bombers escaped. Each revision crumbles government credibility further. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, becomes physically ill learning that American bombers penetrated Japan's defenses. He promised the emperor that the homeland would remain inviolate. Now he faces ultimate loss of face in a culture where honor means everything. I have brought shame upon the empire, Yamamoto writes in his private diary. The Americans have made me a liar before the emperor and the people. This humiliation will drive him to accelerate plans for attacking Midway Island, believing only a decisive naval victory can restore his honor and Japan's sense of invincibility. That battle, fought 6 weeks later, will become Japan's greatest naval disaster. For the American raiders, the mission transforms from triumph to survival. With fuel gauges pointing to empty, they must reach friendly Chinese territory or die. Trying, one by one, the bombers disappear into vast Chinese interior. Weather closes in over the East China Sea, visibility dropping to near zero. Pilots climb desperately through storm clouds, burning precious fuel to stay airborne. By the time they reach the Chinese coast, most fly at 6,000 feet, entirely on instruments. Praying their navigation calculations were accurate, Doolittle's plane retains its command radio. He attempts to reach Chucho Airfield, but receives only static. With fuel exhausted, he orders his crew to bail out. After setting the autopilot, he takes one final look at the instrument panel clock. 9:20 p.m. Exactly 13 hours since launching from Hornet. He jumps into Chinese darkness, convinced the mission has failed catastrophically. History will prove him magnificently wrong. Everyone in Doolittle's crew lands safely in friendly territory, quickly making contact with local Chinese authorities. General Hoyang Ling, director of the regional government in western Zhejiang province, mobilizes search parties along the coast for planes that might have crashed or boats reaching shore. By dawn of April 20th, 4 additional crews are located alive. Doolittle cables General Arnold from the American embassy in Chongqing. Tokyo successfully bombed, due to bad weather on China coast. Believe all airplanes wrecked. 5 crews found safe in China so far. The final accounting reveals both triumph and tragedy. Of 80 Doolittle raiders, 69 eventually reach safety with Chinese help. 3 die in crashes during bailouts or emergency landings. Corporal Leland Fuck, Sergeant William Dieter, and Corporal Donald Fitzmaurice. 8 are captured by Japanese forces. 1 crew lands in Soviet Vladivostok and endures 16 months of internment. The captured Americans face medieval brutality. Lieutenant Dean Hallmark, Lieutenant William Farrow, and Sergeant Harold Spatz are executed by firing squad after sham trials. Lieutenant Robert Meader dies of malnutrition and disease, only to survive 40 months of torture and starvation before liberation in 1945. The human cost extends far beyond American casualties. When Chinese civilians help raiders escape, Japanese retaliation is savage and systematic. The Zhejiang-Jiangxi campaign becomes an orgy of medieval cruelty. Entire villages burn to ash. Civilians are buried alive, crucified, infected with plague and cholera. An estimated 250,000 Chinese die because they showed mercy to American airmen. This tragedy, largely hidden from the American public, represents the raid's darkest consequence. Yet the strategic impact proves immense and lasting. In America, news of the raid explodes across headlines. U.S. bombs Tokyo. Payback for Pearl Harbor. American Eagles strike. Rising sun. The boost to national morale is immeasurable after 4 months of unrelenting defeat. War bond sales skyrocket. Factory production increases. Military enlistments surge. The raid proves America can strike back. That the Pacific is not a Japanese lake. That ultimate victory remains possible. When reporters ask President Roosevelt where the bombers originated, he smiles mysteriously and says Shangri-La, referencing the fictional paradise from Lost Horizon. The American public loves both the mystery and the confidence it represents. Roosevelt's jest will later inspire the naming of the presidential retreat now known as Camp David. In Japan, the psychological damage grows rather than heals. Recognizing that more attacks are inevitable, military leaders pull for frontline fighter squadrons back from combat zones to defend the homeland. These desperately needed units could have altered crucial battles across the Pacific. More significantly, ordinary Japanese begin questioning their leaders' promises. If Tokyo can be bombed, what other lies have they been told? If the divine emperor cannot protect his own palace, is he truly divine? Seeds of doubt, once planted, grow into forests of skepticism. The raid forces Japan into a cascade of strategic errors. Yamamoto, humiliated by his failure to protect the homeland, becomes obsessed with eliminating the American carrier force that made the attack possible. He accelerates Operation Me, the assault on Midway Island, believing decisive naval victory will restore Japanese prestige and his personal honor. The Battle of Midway, fought June 4th to 7th, 1942, becomes Japan's Pearl Harbor in reverse. For aircraft carriers and their irreplaceable veteran aircrews go to the ocean floor. Japan never recovers from this catastrophic defeat. Many historians consider Midway the Pacific War's turning point, with the Doolittle raid as its catalyst. Japan's offensive capability is permanently crippled. America's industrial machine, now fully awakened, begins producing ships, planes, and weapons at rates that dwarf Axis capabilities. The psychological momentum shifts decisively toward the Allies. Doolittle himself, convinced he would face court-martial for losing all his aircraft, instead receives the Medal of Honor from President Roosevelt. He is promoted to grades to brigadier general, skipping colonel entirely. Every surviving raider receives the Distinguished Flying Cross. More importantly, they become living symbols of American courage and innovation. Proof that free societies possess reserves of strength their enemies cannot fathom. The technological achievement proves as significant as the military impact. The successful launch of land-based bombers from an aircraft carrier establishes precedents for complex inter-service operations. Army and Navy units, traditionally rivals, cooperate seamlessly. New navigation equipment, fuel systems, and launch procedures are developed in record time. This spirit of innovation and collaboration will characterize American military operations. Throughout the war, Ted Lawson, one of the raiders who lost his left leg in the mission, returns to Japan as a war correspondent in 1945 and finds a transformed nation. The results of the Doolittle raid are still evident, he writes. They are stamped into the daily habits of the Japanese people. Where before they imagined themselves safe from aerial attack, they now search the skies each morning and night. The psychological impact proves more lasting than any physical damage. The raid establishes the principle that no target lies beyond American reach. Japanese leaders, who counted on geographic isolation for homeland protection, realize that distance no longer provides defense. This knowledge influences every strategic decision Japan makes for the war's remainder. Resources are diverted from offensive operations to homeland defense. The attack mentality shifts toward desperate defensive thinking. Behind the strategic implications lie intensely personal stories of courage, sacrifice, and survival. Staff Sergeant David Thatcher, gunner on Ted Lawson's crew, spends 2 months helping wounded crewmates escape through Japanese-occupied China. Chinese guerrillas risk everything guiding American airmen to safety. Missionary John Birch organizes rescue operations that save dozens of raiders, only to be killed later by Chinese communists. These individual acts of heroism illuminate war's human dimension beyond grand strategy. The raid also demonstrates American industrial and logistical superiority. B-25 Mitchell bombers are modified in weeks to carry maximum fuel while maintaining carrier takeoff capability. The USS Hornet receives special deck modifications and launch equipment. Weather forecasting, intelligence gathering, and operational planning reach new levels of sophistication. This systematic approach to complex operations becomes an American military hallmark. For the Chinese people, the raid brings both inspiration and catastrophe. Seeing American planes over Japanese cities proves the empire is not invincible, encouraging resistance movements across occupied territories. However, the brutal Japanese retaliation devastates entire provinces. The moral complexity is profound. American success triggers savage reprisals against innocent civilians who showed basic human kindness to strangers. The intelligence war reveals crucial advantages. American codebreakers provide vital information about Japanese naval movements. Target selection reflects detailed analysis of Japanese industrial capabilities. Weather prediction gives optimal launch and bombing conditions. Japanese intelligence, despite early warning systems, is caught completely unprepared, dismissing carrier-launched bomber attacks as technically impossible. This failure of imagination costs them dearly. The raid creates a domino effect of consequences, extending years into the future. Midway eliminates Japan's carrier advantage. China campaigns drain resources needed elsewhere. Fighter diversions to homeland defense weaken Pacific operations. Each strategic error leads to others, creating cascading disasters for Japanese war planning. American leaders, emboldened by the raid's success, begin planning increasingly aggressive operations. The island-hopping campaign, Philippines invasion, and strategic bombing offensive all draw lessons from the Doolittle experience. The impossible becomes routine through proper planning, training, and execution. The raid's legacy extends far beyond World War II. It becomes a template for special operations, proving small forces can achieve strategic effects through surprise, innovation, and superior planning. From the Berlin airlift to the moon landing, Americans draw inspiration from the raid's demonstration that audacious goals, properly pursued, can overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The technological innovations prove equally lasting. Carrier-based operations expand dramatically. Long-range bombing becomes routine. Navigation and communication systems improve exponentially. The integration of different military branches becomes standard practice. These developments reshape not just American military capability, but global naval and air warfare. For Japan, April 18, 1942, marks the beginning of the end. The invincibility myth, shattered by American bombs over Tokyo, can never be fully restored. Japanese leaders spend the war's remainder trying to regain psychological advantages, lost in those 17 minutes when B-25s roared over their sacred homeland. The divine protection promised to the people is revealed as human fallibility, preparing them psychologically for eventual surrender. The surviving raiders carry complex burdens of heroism. They have friends who never returned. They remember Chinese villagers who died helping them escape. They know their moment of triumph cost thousands of innocent lives. This moral weight, typical of their generation, makes their achievements more poignant and their character more admirable. When the final accounting is made, the Doolittle raid's impact far exceeds its modest tactical scope. 16 bombers caused minimal physical damage but maximum strategic disruption. 80 young Americans proved that free societies, when threatened, possess unlimited reserves of courage and innovation. They demonstrated that no fortress is impregnable, no ocean too vast, no mission too dangerous, when liberty itself hangs in the balance. The Japanese were indeed celebrating victory on that April morning in 1942, confident in their empire's divine destiny and homeland's inviolate security. By evening, their world had changed forever. Doolittle's raiders had turned Tokyo into hell, not through fire and destruction, but through the simple, terrifying realization that Japan could be touched, could be hurt, could be beaten. The impossible had become inevitable. The invincible had become vulnerable. And the war Japan thought they had won was revealed as the war they would inevitably lose. In those 17 minutes over Japan, 80 Americans rewrote the Pacific War's trajectory and proved that courage, properly applied, can change the world's course. Their legacy echoes through history when freedom faces its darkest hour. Ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things through determination, innovation, and the unshakable belief that no challenge is too great for those who refuse to surrender.